and this is Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives, and we are changing the narrative every day. We have been spoon-fed a narrative of naturalism, a narrative that tells you that you are no one, that you're simply an accident of the cosmos, that you're a highly intelligent, evolved animal. Well, that narrative has done so much damaging impact to culture that it's time to get back to truth. Let's change that narrative back to truth, and that's the truth of God's Word as well. Today, I have Laura Husband on the program, and we are so excited to have you talk just a little bit about your background, about some of the incredible science that your family has been a part of, as well as share your story. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It is, it's quite an honor. Now, you're based out of Houston.
Yes.
But you also have a lot going on in Nashville right now. Tell me about that side of things.
Yes, so based in Houston, but I've been traveling back and forth for my acting. I'm in an acting studio, the Nashville Studio of Method Acting, and I get to train with them. And then I've been part of a few films here recently and some film conferences, one of which was actually here
at the Wonder Center.
Yes. So it's been great to build community in both Tennessee and Texas in the arts community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Nashville is really becoming a place for a lot of arts, a lot of media. I mean, you used to think of Hollywood as the media place, right? And Nashville has become this hotspot for lots of movies are coming out. Christian movies are coming out. All sorts of things. So It's kind of exciting to see what's going on here in the Middle Tennessee area.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative environment. That's what I've really been drawn to about this space. LA, it's more cutthroat maybe, right. And here there's just a sense of collaboration that I've really loved. And even the studio I'm training in, it's we pray at the beginning of class, and so there's just some strong faith community in that as well. So
that is so neat. And we were going to pull one of the guitars off the wall and let you play some. We were talking before the program. You're into all sorts of arts, but you do pick around a little bit on a guitar.
A little bit. Yeah. When the role calls for it. Someone asked if I could play guitar, and I said sure, and then I used the pressure of 2 weeks to learn the song I needed to learn. So
you do what you have to do. That's great.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Well, tell me let's go back in history just a little bit, because your dad is, he was a legend, an astronaut, went to space, was he in the Air Force?
Air Force,
Air
yes.
Force,
and test pilot as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me just a little bit about him and about his history.
Yeah, my dad wanted to be an astronaut since he was 4 years old. So that was like a lifelong dream that started super early. Grew up in Amarillo, Texas, small town in the Panhandle. And from that early age, he watched on TV the Apollo moon missions and got excited and was like, I want to do that one day. And so around middle school, he wrote NASA and said, what do I need to do to become an astronaut? They wrote him back and gave him just kind of this list of like steps he needed to take. And so he kept that in his wallet and then took it to heart and truly, went to school for mechanical engineering, was in the Air Force test pilot, and then those are kind of the steps, and a lot of astronauts have that experience, right? Where depending. He wanted to actually fly the space shuttle. You can be a mission specialist where you have a unique, expertise as a doctor or some other kind of field where you get to ride and then experiment or do things in space. But he wanted to actually fly the rocket.
Right.
So. Yeah.
That is a lot of power. That is a lot of power to control.
Yes. Yeah, it really is.
My goodness. Okay. But at the same time, he had he let his faith shine. Tell me about that.
Yes. Growing up, I knew a dad with really strong priorities of God first, family second, job third.
Wow.
And part of his story leading into that was his own testimony of realigning his own priorities. He would share it as God would had this moment with him. What do you want? And his name is Rick. What do you want, Rick? Yeah. And he's like, well, I want to be an astronaut. And God was like, no, what do you truly want? And so as he peeled back layers, he's like, well, I want to honor God. I want to love my family well, be a good husband, be a good father, and ultimately saw like what would matter if things were stripped away. And with that realigning of priorities, I grew up with the benefits of that shift in him. And so I grew up, with family devotionals and just putting God first in all things. It's not a matter of what your status is or your achievements or how far you go in your career. It's what it means to honor God with just your daily life and
Absolutely.
What you do.
It's how you present yourself every day. It's not simply in these repetitive motions of, I go to church, so therefore, no, it's about being a witness to others and ultimately sharing with others that, hey, I've got something special, and that others are going to see that and they're going to say, I want what they have, right?
Yes.
And you've studied science as well, science and astronomy. But again, we've been told by a lot of people that the atheistic community, they say, you can't even think about astronomy or science or anything like that and also be a Christian. It's just incompatible, right? Because one says that God did everything, and then science tells us that everything happened by chance. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Right. Well, I think science only illuminates deeper the design that God had.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, even I'm fascinated by biology at the cellular level, just the function within a cell. There's machine-like mechanisms. So when you say something like started from one glob, well, there's cells in that, and in the cells there's design. So, and things that carry things to other things, and there's purpose still. So it's hard to get away from design, I think, no matter what type of science you dive into and study. And for space, they get this unique opportunity to look at the world from a new vantage point. And they're seeing this collective alive planet that has, wind patterns and tides and it's perfectly placed in the solar system where we're able to have the right amount of oxygen and gravity so that, we can function in our human bodies on Earth. So it's just, there's a lot that it just, I think, illuminates rather than, you don't have to start making excuses for your faith. I think it just brings it more into color, if anything.
It does. You go back and you're like, well, Galileo said mathematics is the language with which God wrote the universe, has written the universe. And he's this famous astronomer discovering 4 of Jupiter's largest moons, pioneering astronomy, right? You go to Kepler, and Kepler says, I praise thee, my dear Creator, that thou hast made these wonderful things in the heavens, right? You go back to King David, and he says, the heavens declare the glory of God.
Yes.
Then you keep going forward in history, and you go, well, what about Dr. Wernher von Braun, who basically sent men to the moon, was pioneering this rocketry expertise, and he says, when I think creation, I think there must be a creator. When I see the universe, I see these design patterns, right? And then the further forward in history we go, the more there's been this push from a particular side that we have to leave our faith out of the equation. And that's simply not true. The greatest astronomers of all times, and then the greatest astronauts of all time, also realize that you can't separate design from the designer.
No, and some people would ask my dad, like, was being in space, did that make you feel closer to God? And actually his answer would be no. It doesn't. It just gives you another perspective and view and confirmation of things that we have learned and studied. And I think as new discoveries are made, humans can get it wrong. We might assume something about science and then test the theory, and then it comes out different.
Completely
But
different.
it's not hindering what God, created. We're just discovering more answers
About it.
and information about what he already did.
That's right. That's so true. To me, it seems like in astronomy, especially in the astronaut community, a lot of times, you mentioned it just a moment ago, there's this contrast between you get out there and you're looking back down at Earth, and it is this beautiful sphere that is livable, it is habitable, it has all of these conditions suited for life, and then you look out on the other side and you're seeing beauty but desolation, right?
Yes.
It's like beauty but the life is not there, and it's almost like we have a carefully crafted place that is designed to support life, and then the rest of the universe is God's artistry, his canvas, his brushstrokes to show how big he is.
Yes.
And at the same time, there's beauty and design in that.
Yeah, I think it makes you even realize the vastness of his love even more, because he would create this entire universe and yet give us this small place in it, and then live and sacrifice himself on our behalves. It kind of makes this mind-blowing, I don't know, it's a mind-blowing realization if you actually zoom out and look at it from that vantage point.
It really is. But that brings me, when you were 12 years old, the whole world got a shock. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so my dad was on his second mission. He was first mission, he was a pilot, and they were the first to dock with the space station. So that was a cool first mission. And then his second was an experimental mission. They did 16 days and tested things in microgravity. And so they were on their way home. And I was 12, my brother was 7, and my mom, all three of us were at the landing strip waiting for him to arrive back. And there's a countdown clock that counts down until they arrive, and you're supposed to hear the sonic boom at about a minute out when they break the sound barrier and are close. And so as a 12-year-old, I wasn't really paying attention to the speaker with mission control and everything. And a minute out, nothing happened. We didn't hear a sonic boom. And then it started counting down to 0 and started counting up positive numbers.
Wow.
Of time they should have been back now. And I remember going over to my mom and saying, "Mom, is Daddy okay?" And she said, "I don't think so, Laura." And it was just like this moment of first time in my life that I didn't have a parent really meet my needs.
Yeah.
I'd had a pretty cushy, protected, good life up to that point. And my mom saying, "No, I don't think he's okay," that my stomach dropped.
Yeah. I wasn't sure what was going on yet, but I remember us starting to be moved into vehicles, and there was press starting to film us, and they were saying, "Get the crew families out of here." And ultimately, the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated over East Texas. We didn't see that, luckily. Overhead, and so we find this all out within an hour or so. Back at NASA headquarters, they say that a piece of foam hit the left wing and caused it to break apart, and there was no hope for the crew. My goodness. So
it was a pivotal, probably the hardest moment of my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's hard to, I don't think anybody can imagine that. I just don't even know how that would have felt, but the whole world basically was shook at that moment because this was something that got global media attention. And at the same time, here you are today. You have lived through this, and however emotionally challenging it might be, you're here right now, and you have been able to move forward and do some really amazing things. Tell me just a little bit about that progression.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened without God. That's the bottom line, really, is the relationship had been established at an early age for me with God. And I think, honestly, I started seeing God do some preparation for me and protection for me even the year before. That whole year before my dad went to space, I started reading my Bible more because I was annoyed that it didn't speak to me, actually, which is not a normal, I was 6th grade at that time. That's not a normal 6th grader response, but I started reading my Bible a lot. And so when that day happened, a lot of those scriptures came back to mind, of that he's a father to the fatherless, that he binds up the brokenhearted, he's a man of sorrows, acquainted with our grief, and he turns mourning into dancing, just all these things that maybe I wasn't sure how they applied to me. And now I'm in the midst of a moment of need in a new way. And I was like, I need this to be true.
Yes.
Either it's nice things to say to someone or it's really true. And it was a moment where faith really came to fruition, of seeing like God was tried and true, and showing up in these ways where I had big questions, small questions, like, who's going to help me with math?
Oh, wow.
Or, are we going to be able to keep our house? Do I have to get a job? Like, what's normal anymore? Right. What will that look like? And even just, bigger things down the way of like, what will that look like? Well, who will walk me down the aisle one day if I get married? All these things. But I've watched God answer question after question as I go. And he has shown up. His track record is good. I think that's the thing that I celebrate and want to share with people who are going through hard things, is he has a good track record. We're not immune from emotions. We're not immune from hardship and tragedy, but it doesn't mean that we're alone in it.
That's right.
And God can bring good from it, and he can bring new life from it too. Thinking of even like burying a seed has to shed something or die in order for the thing to grow, or a phoenix coming from the ashes, that type of concept, or beauty from ashes. There's this redemptive thing that God can do through pain and tragedy, and I keep watching him do it in my life. And I think it gave me a lot more boldness too, of life is short and we have one life to live, and we have to cherish every moment and not waste time, and really think about what you're living for, because we don't know how much time we have to do something with that.
Nope. Yeah. It could be tomorrow. It could, you could experience a very long life. We don't know.
Yeah.
But if you have a gift, you need to be using it. And I know it's really hard to understand in the moment that there is purpose through events that are so tragic.
Yeah.
And then down the road, you do find important life lessons that were taught as a result of that, as painful as they might be. But tell me, what led you to pursue a professional career as in performing arts, acting, all of these different fields?
Mm-hmm. It's always been in me, and I think that was what was encouraging to me when I realized it wasn't like a trauma response. I, since a very early age, have loved storytelling, have loved music, have loved shows and plays, and the way it makes you feel, or it makes you think deeper on something. And so I'd lock myself in my room like with musicals on all day, or do a play at home and show my parents to their ticketed seat in our house, with a flashlight.
Oh, I love it.
So
I love it.
That was always in me. And I think it just grew and developed as I grew. And my dad was a big dreamer. And so I think that was also in me too, to dream big. And so I enjoy diving into things from a creative approach. And in the past 2 years, God's kind of centered that calling into 3 words for me, which are beauty, collaboration, and impact.
Okay.
So beauty being just capturing awe-inspiring things, or being a part of things that are awe-inspiring, that make people think or wonder, or ask questions or have deeper conversation. And then collaboration, this, whether it's a show or a film, working with other people to bring about some kind of product and honestly gift, like we're serving through our talents and our gifts a greater purpose, and then hopefully through that making an impact for the kingdom of God and in people's lives.
That's so neat. How does you've got a degree in religion or religious studies? What is
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah, I have a bachelor in religion.
How about that?
So I studied all different world religions. I was fascinated with culture and travel and my own faith. I just wanted to be able to have a conversation with anyone and understand a little bit more where they were coming from. And that has played into any conversation I have with any human being, because everybody believes something.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you have an organized religion you believe in or you're an atheist, you still have a belief system. And it helps me be able to have a starting point to understand other people better.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is so neat that you can kind of figure out how to use those opportunities for the maximum impact, that last thing. Which kind of brings me to something that we do here at the Wonder Center, but you also incorporate, right? In our mission statement, we're trying to reveal God's glory through his creation using science and STEAM, right? You got science, you got technology, you have engineering principles, which are all over creation. You've got arts, because truly you can't even talk about music without looking at the design of music, right? The incredible intricacies of the physics that allows that, the expression, human expression, right? It's something that there are birds that will do these dances, okay, which are quite beautiful. But at the same time, there's something about human expression where we have taken everything to another level, and we're like, well, how can we use this in an artistic form to reach all of these people around us and ignite their curiosity, inspire them to go out, right? So tell me just a little bit about how you use STEAM and why you're such a big advocate of it.
Yes, everyone needs to shift from STEM to STEAM.
Yes.
I fully support that. The importance is, I think most people get it when we say, wellness includes not only exercise, but spiritual, mental, emotional. There's all these things that interact to create overall wellness in a human being. I think it's the same in like different facets of study. You can't just study science and then leave art out of it, or study math. Like even doing music theory, my brain starts feeling more like a math mindset when I'm working on music theory. So I think it limits us if we don't include all aspects of study. And science is beautiful, and sometimes the best way to capture that is through art.
It is.
Or through poetry or through a song. We need all those different elements to speak to different parts of our brain even. Because music accesses a different part of our brain than doing a math problem. So it's all effective and essential, not just sometimes people think only math is essential, but there's other things that remain essential to contribute to one another and complement each other.
Absolutely. One of the first things that comes to my mind when you think STEAM is a building, okay? Like a skyscraper. A skyscraper is engineering.
Yep.
Because it is trying to have the least footprint but contain the maximum amount of offices or people or whatever it might be, right? But you have to use scientific principles throughout the building of that skyscraper, physics, in that engineering, in the architecture. But you don't just build a building, right? You go to an architectural firm and you use mathematics to figure out what's possible to create this structure with the maximum beauty. That's where arts comes in, right?
Yes.
Because design is oftentimes beautiful. And there's a huge correlation between the two that very few people get.
Yes, I think one of the most powerful ways creativity happens is when you give it certain restrictions. So within a building, there's certain restrictions you need, and then how can you create something with those restrictions or with those, and that's how things become designed, because you have a certain restriction, but then you're able to flourish within that system of parameters that you've given yourself.
Isn't that also applicable to pretty much everything around us, whether it's a rose, right? A rose has restrictions in its genetic code where it can't go beyond those boundaries, and yet it shows engineering principles, it shows design, it shows artistry and beauty that can't be, it's hard to fathom, right?
Yeah.
Which again speaks to a mind that is greater than nature itself, a mind that I believe is God, is the God of the universe. We want to thank you for being here today, Laura, for sharing your story, for being so candid, for also bringing in a faith component that is oftentimes incredibly ignored whenever we start to talk about scientific topics, and for remaining true to your calling, to pursuing those gifts that you might have. And just thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for joining us today. We aim to bring to attention so many people throughout the world, so many individuals who have a unique story, who are changing the narrative in their way, who have a history that we can learn from, and we bring those to you every week on Changing the Narrative. I'm David Rives, and until next time, I want to remind you to keep looking up, because truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Find us on all social platforms to stay informed. Watch Genesis Science Network 24/7 for free on Roku, Fire TV, and on our website. Visit the world's largest origins-based store, creationsuperstore.com. Plan your trip to the Wonders Center and Science Museum just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Donate to our nonprofit ministry to help us continue sharing truth.